When we are moving from ignorance to knowledge, from denial to acceptance, God does something beautiful in us. He begins to open our heart to literally be hospitable for our dark side. Yeah. David Benner has helped me with this more than any other mentor that I've had. He's one of my author mentors. I've read tons of his stuff, love the content, and always is giving me greater insight into my sinfulness, my brokenness, my selfishness. Things all of a sudden that I couldn't see, I see. Things that I didn't know, now I know. Things I couldn't understand about myself, now I understand. And one of those is that until I could be hospitable to my dark side, I could not bring it into God's light because I was not acknowledging it was there. We're talking about awareness. Awareness is the process of some truth about God or ourselves coming to light. I'll say it again. Awareness is the process of some truth about God, who He is and His purposes for our life, and who we are, some brokenness or sinfulness or selfishness, coming to light. It's seeing what previously was unseen, knowing what was previously unknown, understanding what was previously not understood. So we talked about, we're just kind of doing kind of a review this week as we kind of begin to wrap up the content of our message and our focus on sin. Although I hope we'll never stop focusing on our sin so we can bring it into God's redeeming love and grace, forgive it, because Jesus paid the penalty for sin, and then kill it, die to the power of sin. That happens when I say, that is my problem. I own it. If you watched the message this week, I had some fun. I had if you did not watch it, let me tell you real quick, I had a couple of saddles on stage, a couple saddles. I mentioned something I heard years ago that popped for me. If someone calls you a donkey, like you know what a donkey is called, sometimes people call it an ass. That gives a little more spiciness. If someone calls you a donkey, I'll keep it tame. Pay it no mind. If two people call you a donkey, consider the source. If three people call you a donkey, buy a saddle. And so I had the saddles up on stage. And the reason I did was because I didn't want to miscommunicate that it was bad to buy a saddle. I don't think it's bad to buy a saddle. I think whenever all of a sudden awareness starts happening, I start recognizing I do have an anger problem. Oh my gosh, I do have a lust problem. I have an insecurity problem. When you start recognizing the problem, buy the saddle. Just buying the saddle just means you stop denying it. That's all it means. It's not you're bad because you have to buy a saddle. It means you recognize that you're desperate for God to deal with your sin. And if you keep denying it, there's no moving beyond it. There's no healing it. There's no leaving it. So when you and I can take stock of our lives and simply begin to own whatever it is that's lurking in our lives, we bought a saddle. So I sat on the saddle and said I had to learn the hard way. Most of my growth has been the hard way. I've had to learn that I had an anger problem. It wasn't overt to most people. In fact, I never had three people tell me I was angry. I really just needed to accept one person, my wife, to help me see it. I had to see that I was a control freak. I was trying to control everything. And until I came to terms with that, I couldn't let go of anything. I had to come to terms that I had an anxiety disorder, that I was living at such a crazy pace because I was trying to stay ahead of my anxiety. And until I could see it, I could not break it. Until I could own it, I could not disown it. Until I could see how it was living within me, I couldn't put it to death. God wants you and I to build a sense of awareness. And when we do, we can begin to understand. 4 little things that I said are true in our text. A, is that sin, this thing inside me that lurks down below the surface, can be activated by pride and anger. Oh, I had so much pride. My pride was manifest most severely in my workaholism. I wanted to work harder than anybody, longer than anybody, because I didn't want anybody to say I wasn't working enough. That'd be the worst thing. It was sin inside me trying to control my surroundings by working hard. And it was exhausting. It was exhausting. I remember when someone would criticize me, I would think, how can you criticize me when I work so hard? How can you dare say I'm not doing a good job when I put in more time than anybody? Wow, that was a hard pill to swallow. Oh, it was so tough, but it was so true. I had to buy a saddle. I hope that you can recognize that when I buy that saddle, when I take ownership on it, chances are I'm going to find someone else who has the same saddle. I love recovery ministry. I love our CR program. I love the fact that when people who want to deal with their alcoholism sit down, usually on a weekly basis, with other people and say, hi, I'm Jeff. I'm an alcoholic. They own it. They bought the saddle. When you and I can start looking closely at what's going on under the surface, we can discover God's healing, His strength is there, even in our greatest weakness. The Apostle Paul said in 2 Corinthians, by His grace, he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, God said to me, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about insults and persecutions and difficulties and hardships. For when I am weak, then I'm strong. When I recognize that I have a saddle, I can dismount. I can start moving away. But until I recognize where I'm sitting and what is going on in my life, I'm the captive of whatever that is. Jesus, help us today to buy a saddle. Help us today to be truthful, honest with ourselves. Lord, help us to listen to those around us for the insights they may have that we do not yet have because the lights haven't come on. We've been eluded. Revelation, truth about who we are has eluded us. So Lord, illumine us today with not only who we are in the reality of our sin, but who you are in the reality of your grace. Thank you for your acceptance that's completely adequate to help me to accept what needs to begin to change in my own life. I will see you tomorrow. God bless.